this is something that I love to do with students. I'll introduce myself in a second properly, but the Engage and Ignite, you can use for students, but I actually use this as well for teachers so they can model it to students. So obviously it's teacher related. What's one practice that you use to check in with your students?
Okay, so I actually do work directly with students during a summer learning program that I've run for probably 6-7 years now. It's called Can't Make a Zay, and it's run for 3 weeks, and it's a numeracy and literacy program.
Yeah.
That we do. And it's my favorite part of my job because it's the only time I actually get to, well, it's one of the few times I actually get to work, right, with students. But we always start our day in a different way to check in.
Yeah.
So one of the ways that we use, that we've used is emojis. So something as simple, because they love it, right? Like, show me an emoji of how you're entering our space right now.
Love it.
Yeah.
Well, you're going to like what I show you then. You're on the right track for that. That's great. And I think that also is a really good way of capturing the social emotional element.
Yes.
Because it's very much needed, especially now, right? With everything that's going on. I feel like so many teachers are forgetting that element to just check in with themselves as well, right? Not just students. All right, that's great. Oh, good. Thanks for sharing. So a bit about me, you can see scattered around with all these pictures. So I'm from Australia. What can I say? I have Minds Beyond Measure, which is the organization running this program. You see on the bottom, me with students in one of my programs, Rhythm for Life, where we actually do have like a drumming circle to teach social emotional learning. And it's a really good way to get kids, especially in the urban community. That's my focus. So I work with them here in Brooklyn, New York. And then, so I'm from Australia, as you can guess from the koala bear. Love food, love wineries, you can see with my family. So that's me. And this is something I do, and it sounds like you do as well, with teachers, but also students as well. Like, share who I am, what I love, and just give them a piece of who I am. So then it's easier for them, hopefully, to open up, if not straight away, right, within time. So this is something, I don't know if you've used this, Tina. It's a Padlet. Have you heard of Padlet?
Yes, I use Padlet quite a bit. Yeah, okay. I love Padlet. Yeah.
I'm not going to explain how to use it. You know, your phone scan. So what I would love for you to do, I know it's just yourself. You don't need to do it. If you want to practice doing it, sure, go ahead. But there's something that, and I'll share the Padlet with you. This is great for students to share a bit about themselves. So I put, what special skill or passion do you have? And then a recent photo.
Ooh.
Yeah, that is good. Tell me, well, do you want to scan it? Tell me, and then I can pull up the Padlet and show you. I did a sample.
Okay, I am on my phone. That's the only thing.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
Also, you know what? Let's see. Okay, I'll pull it up.
Oh, we have another participant.
Welcome, Joan. So, Joan, if you're just joining us, we're getting to know one another. So if you can use your phone, if you are on your phone, just scan the QR code there or put in the chat box. But Tina, as I was saying, I'll pause the share just to show you what it would look like. And I've seen it done with students and teachers. It's so good, especially if you're savvy with technology. If you're not, it's still very easy. So Padlet, let's see. Okay, tell me, hopefully you could see this in a moment. Can you see the Padlet?
Yep, I can see it.
Perfect. So this is something you can use with students and teachers. So the plus sign here allows you to add links, external things, photos. So this is how I added a photo. And so I've seen teachers and students fill up this board where they get to share whatever the prompt is that the teacher creates, and then a photo. And, you know, students have photos on their phone all the time. Like, that's not hard. So they can just download it and they get to see who their classmates are. So that's a really great way to be culturally responsive. So just sharing a bit about themselves on a board, and they get to see where everybody's from as well. So they could see, oh, wow, we have someone from this part or this country. Like I just discovered you're from Canada. Joan, if you want to pop in the chat box, just your name, well, we know your name, your role, and where you're from. I'm from New York right now, but I'm actually originally from Australia, hence the accent. So yeah, so once you've done that in the chat box, yeah, just share one skill, one passion. And I put here, I love traveling. So that's my passion. So I'd love to hear what one passion or skill you have. And it's good, it gets people to be interactive as well. Okay, I'll shut this Padlet down and head back to the presentation. So feel free to write in the chat box. So Tina, what you were saying about emojis, checking in. So this is something I love to do. I've been a part of many webinars where they do this, and it's really good because it gets yourself in check. Like, where am I actually at? Can I breathe? You know, as educators, like, where am I? I've experienced probably several of these emotions on a daily basis at sometimes. But right now, I would say, and pop in the chat box where you think you are, but I would say I'm currently on a number 3 mixed with a number 2. So just go ahead and put in the chat box what you think you're feeling. How are you feeling right now? And you can put more than 1. Welcome for those that are joining. Hello, Starla. We're just checking in and seeing how we feel. I really like number 6. I wish I could feel like that more often. Okay, let's see. We have a number 2. Yes, calm. Wusa, that's something to remember as a teacher, right? Not letting things get to you, especially in front of students, not giving them that reaction. And we want them to be as calm as possible too. Okay. So if you are just joining us, pop in the chat box where you're from, your name and your role, just so we can get to know each other. Okay, so moving along. One thing I will share is giphy.com is where I got these. Phenomenal. They're free. And all you have to do is insert the link, or you can embed it into your presentation. So students can really relate to this. There's cartoons. You could use so many variations here. And notice I put strategy on the bottom left corner. So look out for that because they will be popping up throughout the session. Okay, this is something that I would love for everybody to pop in the chat box, because there is a purpose to this that I'll share at the end and hopefully throughout the session as well, if I can get the breakout rooms with no glitch. This is something that is a phenomenal strategy I've seen teachers use in their virtual teaching sessions. And you can also do this in person as well. So giving students the option to go in, if we're doing virtual breakout rooms, teacher help rooms. So it's just the teacher and the students who really want that support. And the second one, open group. So I want to turn on my mic and camera and talk about today's work with my peers. And 3 is the quiet room. I want to ask questions and share ideas with my classmates quietly through the chat. So that's more of a quiet session. And then number 4 is I work best alone. So that's where I want to be in a quiet room by myself. So this strategy is really a good way to differentiate your classroom and respect everybody's differences and where they're at with their learning. And that is really good to practice cultural responsiveness in this way. So if you put in the chat box, I'll look out for the numbers right now. I would love to know if you can just put WR, so I know WR is for this, and just put what you're in the mood for. Like, what do you personally feel that you could handle right now in a chat room? And depending on the size, we may be able to accommodate that. So I will just put workroom number 1 because I can be in the teacher room helping students. 4 or 3. And it's good. So you see in the chat box, you respect everybody's space. Everybody could share where they'd like to be in their workroom. And again, this can be used in person as well. So you could have different stations in the classroom. So you could have students in that corner who really need teacher support. And this group over here, very independent study. I mean, you can do it in so many different ways. All right, so feel free. I would love it if everyone could put in what their preference is. But if you don't, that's okay. It'll make me good. Thank you. Either room works for me. That makes it easier for me to illustrate this strategy. Okay, so community guidelines, something that most of you are probably already aware of, all of you. Community guidelines just really set the tone to what the teacher expects and what students can expect from one another. So modeling empathy, respecting differences, especially in a culturally responsive classroom. We want to be mindful of everybody's perspectives and experiences. So these not only are for this group here, but for students as well. If you're coming from a population that has diverse languages and ethnicities, it's important to remember that our language is inclusive and culturally appropriate. Also, that we are all learning, coming at different points in life. Diverse opinions, welcome them because we all come with different ideas. And listen respectfully, especially in the workspace, in the workroom, the breakout rooms. Embrace growth and new knowledge and participate and have fun, because we do want students to have fun when in our classes, right? Okay, so the whole purpose to this session is that we can cultivate a culturally responsive practice, or more than one practice, and create authentic relationships across multiple cultures and learning, so our classroom is culturally responsive. And this is a goal that I put this together. I was like, how can I share with people what cultural responsiveness is? I've spent months and months researching this, different gurus in this field, such as Zaretta Hammond. I will write that in the chat box. If you need me to during the session, just ask me to write it in, Zaretta Hammond. So one thing that I took away from all the research from several different scholars is that to develop a culturally responsive classroom means to build and nurture that student-teacher relationship and create opportunities for your students to engage and connect and relate with the instructional content as well as each other. So that is the purpose of this session, to help you achieve that with your students. So just look out for these strategy symbols throughout the session. You've already seen this one in the top right corner, instructional strategy. So the reason why I did this is to let you know how many different strategies you can embed into your online classrooms. But it's not just online. You could still incorporate this into your in-person classrooms, especially if you're doing a PowerPoint presentation or anything digitally. So just look out for these things as well. And quick write, it's something that they could either do in the chat box or in their notebooks, where they're actually writing something based on a video, an image, or something that you're sharing with them. Okay, so 3 things I want to share with you for this session. I'm keeping it simple. I firstly want to define what cultural responsiveness is. Second, class, climate, and culture. That is what we're here for. How do we develop that positive class, climate, and culture? And the third one, I'm going to give you 2 action steps and questions that can challenge you to help build that cultural responsive classroom. So let's look at defining cultural responsiveness. So what I would love to do right now is I'm going to pull up a poll, and I want you to rate yourself on a scale of 0 to 3 of where you think your level of awareness is of culturally responsive practices. So I'll give you a moment just to look at those, and then I will launch the poll as you read those. So feel free to respond. And remember, we're all coming from different positions in life. We're all on a different journey. Great. We're seeing, I'm going to share it with you. So I'm seeing some diversity here, which is great. And it is anonymous, so your name won't show up. So feel free to be honest. No one will see your name. Okay, I'll give maybe another 5 seconds just so we can get everyone's response. Okay, I will end the poll. Can you all see that? Maybe just type a yes in the chat box just so I can see the poll is showing up for you. Okay, here we go. Thanks, Starla. Can we see it now? Hopefully you can. Sharing poll results. It's invisible on Zoom for some reason. Okay, so you can see we have 1, 2. So some of us have limited knowledge, some have a good amount of knowledge. I rarely ever see teachers put a 3. I have seen some zeros, and that's okay. And I will emphasize that this is like 100%. This is one of the most challenging topics I've ever trained teachers on, because it's a journey. It's not like one strategy and that's it. It's a long life journey where you're constantly looking at how you can embed strategies into this type of practice. And notice I put strategy here. This is a really, really good thing, strategy to use in your teaching, because it really gives you an idea of where students are at. So if you're introducing a topic, whether it be history, science, social studies, it really gives you a gauge of how to prepare your lesson. And maybe if you have a majority of students that have no knowledge, then you start from basic. And if you have it scattered throughout, then maybe you need to have those different workrooms or stations where students can work at different levels, but still working towards the same goal. So before I dive into cultural responsiveness, it's super important to understand what culture is. So Zaretta Hammond, absolutely love what she said. She mentioned that there were 3 levels of culture, and she said that the leaves and the branches is the shallow level. This is where we get to know students' dress, their culture, their food, the holidays that they celebrate. Then she mentioned the surface level being the 2nd level. So that's where we look at things such as rules around everyday social interactions. And then finally, we have the deeper level, which is the roots. And they are things like core beliefs and values, unconscious assumptions. And so our job as educators is to try to get to the roots of culture and the cultures within our classrooms. So that includes the values and how do we build trust. And so that takes a lot more to get to those roots. But you do need to start off with these 2 levels. And as you can see, culture really does include some of these things here. And this is not exhaustive. There's way more elements to this, but you can see these are all part of culture. And no matter where we come from, Australia, Canada, the Philippines, Angola, wherever we are in the world, we each can recognize that there are different mannerisms, different celebrations, art. So how do we actually be inclusive of all that culture within one classroom, and not just one classroom, but multiple classrooms? So we need to take into account that each student brings a set of these elements into your classroom. So again, if you don't have your mobile phone, no problem. You can go to menti.com and enter that code in the bottom right corner. I'm doing a word cloud, so this is another strategy you could use with students. If you have used this, great. If you haven't, you will love it. It's a free application. So this is where we get students to write their responses. So just if you're not familiar with it, grab your mobile phone, get to your camera and just scan that code, and it would automatically pop up a link. And then you will actually have the opportunity to enter some responses. And as a teacher, you could select how many responses you want from your students. So what do you think of when you hear cultural responsiveness? I'll give you a moment. And while you're doing that, I will pull up the Menti word cloud so you could see what it looks like. So I would really love it if everybody could actively participate. if we want our students to participate, we need to participate ourselves. So it would be great if you could pop your responses in that word cloud. I'm not seeing any responses yet, so I'll just give maybe another 15 seconds. So you can go to menti.com and enter that code. I would love to see what everybody thinks of. What word or words can you think of when you hear cultural responsiveness? If you don't have access, please feel free to put in the chat box. You're not limited to this word cloud. So hopefully you can see this, everybody. This is what the Menti question looks like. I'm not seeing any responses. It would be great if we had some responses. If not, I do have a backup. I have a sample of another presentation that I had, so we will be able to see what it looks like. It looks like we do, so great. I am going to refresh this. That's great. I do see, if you look on the bottom right corner, you can see some responses. So you'll know when students actually put in their responses. So I'm going to refresh this. Very interesting that it is not popping up. If you don't mind, just put in the chat box. I am seeing that there are responses, but it's not coming up on the word cloud. Don't you just love technology? In the chat box, yes, thank you, Joan, for trying to respond. I do see, I've tested this multiple times, so I'm not sure why it's not showing. Put in the chat box. Thank you, Starla, I appreciate it. Tina, I will put that in. Sure thing. Let's see if it works for you. So we have socially aware, respect and inclusivity, acknowledging differences, compassionate, empathetic, very good. So what I'm going to do is share with you what a word cloud looks like. So this is what hopefully you will get when you do this with your students. I was shocked. If you look at the bottom right corner, I cannot believe it. I posted this in a webinar 2 months ago. I forgot to close it. So you can see 189 people have accessed this. So I was really excited to see. Take a screenshot if you would like, but this is phenomenal. So what happens, for those that don't know how it works, the more people that put the same response, the larger the font. So looking at this word cloud, you could see diversity, inclusive, understanding, awareness are the most popular responses, hence why they're the largest. They have the largest font. So great activity, it's colorful, it's interactive. And again, for those that don't have access to it, you could just use the chat box. So let's dig in. Cultural responsiveness. So you will see on the top, there are so many different terminologies to use, but we are focusing on culturally responsive pedagogy, teaching, instruction. These are all interchangeable except for social justice, multicultural education. I highly recommend you look into that if you have free time, that is. So you can see there are so many different definitions, but I really like what New York Department of Education put out there. They have a sustaining education curriculum, and that's what they use. And this is something, like I mentioned earlier, I put together with my own research. Like I said, I've been a teacher for around 15 years. Now I'm actually curriculum developer for Britannica, and I've taught in 7 countries across Asia, Australia, and the Caribbean. So with all my research, studies, and endless experience in so many diverse classrooms, this is what I've come up with. And I feel that it really does capture what cultural responsive teaching is. It's not a strategy. program or single lesson. It's a research-based instructional practice and approach that helps students make meaningful connections between what they learn at school with their own personal cultures, languages, and life experiences. And it is a rich, intentional approach, and it's woven into every aspect of your teaching. So many of you may ask, well, how do we do that? Hopefully I could show you some things today. Not hopefully, I will. So on the bottom, I also put that it encompasses social, emotional, relational, and cognitive aspects of teaching, as well as higher order thinking. So a lot of educators think it's just including different cultures and diversity. It's actually more than that. We are actually embedding Bloom's taxonomy, which is really good for knowing the level of skills we want to implement into our classroom and our pedagogy. We're thinking higher order thinking. We want students to think from here and just gradually build them up to thinking more critically and more, higher order type questions. Okay, so let's move on to the second element, class, climate, and culture. So we're going to get more engaging with some of the activities. What I want you to do right here is this is going to be a silent activity. It's an imagine activity. So reflect on the climate and culture of one of your favorite classes and teacher from back in the day. Imagine yourself, you're going back in time, you're thinking of that one teacher. I know when I did this activity, I could think of maybe at least 2 teachers. I'm sure you can think of one that comes to mind, or 2 or more. So I want you to just think of 3 things. How does it look? How does it feel? How do you feel? And what does it sound like if you transport yourself back to that classroom in that time? And I've just included some questions on the bottom. So I'll just give you a moment to reflect on that. Okay, so that was a silent activity. Now we're going to get a little more interactive. What I would like for you to do, take a picture of this screen because we are going to attempt the breakout groups. So this time you've reflected on a teacher of the past. Now I want you to reflect on the climate and culture of your own classroom environment, whether that be virtual or in person. So imagine if there was an outsider looking into their classroom, what would it look like to them? How do you think it would feel? And what does it sound like? Is it warm, welcoming, inviting? Are students bored? Are they tired? Are they engaged, disengaged? Are the walls, whether they're virtual walls or in-person walls, how does it look? Is it engaging, colorful? Is it bare? So take a picture. I am going to attempt the breakout rooms. So I would love to give you 2 minutes and I want you to discuss with your team what you notice. Okay, so just reflect on that within your small group. And remember, I want you to try to be as interactive as you can. If you're not comfortable, then maybe just chat in the box. And one person is going to do a share out, hopefully after we meet back in this main room. So I'm going to send us off to some breakout rooms. So have fun.
Not bad.
I feel bad because this is amazing and I want to engage and I've got like 50 things going on at the same time. I'm like, man, this isn't like a normal one. This is so right. Like, and I love that, but
yes, I totally agree with you.
I wish I had been more prepared to, you know what I mean? Like to it not be like a regular webinar, which I absolutely love that it is, but I'm like trying to make dinner and I have a doctor's appointment I'm going to.
Oh man.
So she wants us to reflect on the climate and culture of your classroom environment. What is it like? Does she want us to talk about it, you think?
Yes. Pretend I'm not here. I'm just checking with
Oh,
my
okay.
students.
Okay.
How would they,
Okay.
what would an outsider, can you see the screen? What would they, what do you think they would see it looks like, feels like, sounds like in your class if they were observing?
So Tina, are you a teacher right now?
Well, that's it. Like I'm a teacher consultant, but I do a 3-week program in the summer that I run and facilitate with students. So I'm thinking about that one, right?
Okay.
Because it is the environment that I have the most influence and, you know what I'm saying, over.
Yeah.
And like, what would it look, are you a classroom teacher?
I am not, I'm new.
Oh.
So I'm actually just on the hiring list here in Ontario.
Wow. Congratulations. Oh,
thank
congratulations.
you. But
you know, funny and very passionate. Not a lot on the wall. It was high school. I can't remember what was on the wall. It was a long time ago. But he was just really keen to, you know, have the students involved, and we could meet with him after the fact too. Oh,
excellent. There's the questions.
So, you know,
thank you.
He would invite you to come back if you had any questions before tests. He was, yeah, an amazing person.
Excellent. I would say my favorite classroom would have been a primary classroom. And I think it was because we saw our work up on the board. Our teachers tried to do innovative things and engage us. And I was thinking back to high school, there wasn't a lot of diversity in teaching. It was very much open your textbook, do your writing. There was, like you said, there was nothing on the walls. There was no, this is our space. It wasn't very inviting. We came in, we sat in our groups, we did the work that we had to do, and then we left. But yeah, the primary camp when I was in primary school would have definitely been a much more engaging classroom.
Right. You're saying because your work, you could see your work, like you felt like in those primary classrooms that you were more engaged and they acknowledged all of the kids in the room.
Yeah, there's a much stronger relationship between the teacher and the student when I went to school. Yeah, and I don't think there was that kind of connect in my high school experience. So I try to be a different teacher for my students. As a high school teacher, like I do put up their work. We try and take ownership of our space, even though we share the space with other classes. I have a primary teaching room and then one other classroom or 2 other classrooms that I teach out of as well.
Hello, hello. I detected an Aussie accent in one breakout room. Where are you from?
Queensland, Townsville.
Jealous.
It's raining at the moment, so
I'm still jealous.
Yeah.
Melbourne, I'm from Melbourne, so you've got the best weather. I love I love Queensland, but I'm in New York right now. So it was hailing and now it's sunny. It's very confusing. It reminds me of
Yeah.
Melbourne.
I was just going to say, sounds like Melbourne.
Great. Okay. I think we're waiting on, I think that's it. All right. Hopefully the session was good. Does anyone want to share out maybe what they got from it or what they discussed in their group? A very, very high level summary, just for time's sake. I'd love to hear what stood out to you or what was shared. Any game brave people? Okay, maybe
I just want Carmen, you had a lot of really interesting observations of engaging high school students with some of the things that you do with your older students. I don't know if you want to speak to that, but I thought that was really interesting because we often think of that in the primary classrooms.
Well, I was just talking about how my experience of high school was very open to textbook, chalk and talk. There was no acknowledgement of relationship between the students and any kind of prior knowledge. And so I suppose taking from my experience, I try and engage our students with their learning and putting their suggestions and their understandings up around the room for them to have some reciprocal learning, but also some ownership, and that they feel like they are contributing and learning and creating community. Yeah.
Excellent. Thanks, Carmen. I appreciate it. I wish I could have stayed in all breakout rooms. So hopefully you just got a taste of it. I'm sure you're all familiar with this kind of setup, but it's a really great way to get that discussion, rich discussion. And if we had them, like, how I showed the 4 rooms, I imagine that you have, different groups of students in each room. They feel very respected and safe in that room and not forced to talk if they don't want to talk. And then talkative if, students like me love to talk, and that's how I learn, by processing through talking. So, keeping that in mind. Notice I put the little strategy symbol. It's a share out. So I usually do that for share outs. Okay, so what does it look, sound, and feel like? So we've introduced a little bit about that through our discussions. So what do you notice here? In the chat box, I would love for you to just put some words or just a couple of words. What do you notice? Maybe the most obvious one, bare classroom, very minimal things placed on the wall. We have in the chat box, boring, disengaged. Students are not able to engage with each other. Exactly. Students with head down, clearly they're not engaged. Yep. How about the teacher? When I saw that, I was like, oh, yeah, absent. That's a good way to put it. Absent teacher. So, not letting our emotions take a hold of us, because sometimes that could show the students, oh, teacher is not really present for us. Yes, looks overwhelmed. Exactly. I mean, and it's a fact, like we do get overwhelmed as educators, but how we handle that is very important. How students model that towards their peers as well, especially in elementary or primary school. I put little symbols here too. This is a strategy I like to use, especially for virtual lessons, or if you're presenting digitally in person. It's a quick write. So anything that involves students writing in the chat box or even in their notebooks, it's a little symbol that they get to become very familiar with. Oh, quick write, this is a written response. We need to write in our books or journals. What do you notice here? Same thing, just pop in the chat box what things you notice. There's quite a contrast here. Lots of color going on. Yes, interaction, happy faces, engaged students. And that doesn't happen automatically. Usually there takes a lot of planning, right? Routines, students looking at each other. Yeah, very important. Yeah, it looks welcoming. That's a big factor. Students moving around. I am extremely big on that, especially with all the brain studies. I'm not a neurosurgeon or anything like that, but I'm a bit nerdy. I like neuroscience. And I cannot tell you how much research I've come across that says that physical activity in certain parts or stages, especially for the younger students in elementary school, is huge. Even if it's like the top corner, the top left corner, if they're doing like a gallery walk or they're looking at each other's work, getting them active and standing up, and it helps those that have, you know, struggled to sit down for long periods of time, and they may struggle with an attention span that's limiting compared to some, you know, other students. So keeping that in mind, yeah, students moving around the room. Okay, great. Thanks for sharing. Oops, apologies, it went to the link. Okay, so let me continue on. So I love this video. I'm going to share this with you. So what I want you to do, again, it's a quick write. Feel free to chat in the chat, write in the chat box. As students, I'd say in your notebooks or, you know, in your journals. So take notes on what you see in this video. So just sit back and relax and look at the things I've put in the parentheses: physical environment, strategies, students, teacher behavior. Look at all of it. I'll just fast forward, sorry, to save time. Hang on one sec. Here we go.
Everybody look at me. Everybody look at me. All right, guys. Today for Making Meaning, we're going to read a new book called Amelia's Road. And to introduce the book, we are going to do an action thermometer. There is a statement on the board. If you agree with this statement, you're going to move to the front of the room. And if you disagree with the statement, you're going to move to the back of the room. If you kind of don't know, you can be somewhere in the middle. And will somebody raise their righteous hand so that you can read the statement out loud? Sydney.
Moving homes from place to place would be lots of fun.
Great job. All right. Ready? Any questions? I like to move it. Interesting. Very interesting. Okay, so now we're going to do a think, pair, share. First, you're going to think about why did you move to this part of the room? Why do you agree or disagree with this statement? And then you will pair with someone next to you and talk about why you moved there. And then we will share with the whole classroom. I will pick sticks, okay? All right, so first, think. Now pair.
Sometimes I don't like it because I have to move away from it.
No, they will go to school and they won't know no one. So and then they're gonna not know anybody. And
Everybody give me 5. Everybody give me 5. Okay, that was very interesting listening to your conversations. I'd like to share those with the group. So if I'm going to pick a stick and you are going to share what your partner said. All right? Pamela.
my partner said he won't like the neighborhood because it's like a lot of music and a lot of noise around, and he just can't go to sleep because he gotta wake up for school. And that's why.
So he wants to move around?
Mhm.
Okay, all right. Next stick. Carlos.
It won't be really great to go to a different school because if you really won't know anybody, then there'll be bullies, and then they'll pick on you, and then it make you a horrible life for a year in school.
Okay, so you'd rather stay in the same place. Okay. All right, one more step. Landra.
Well, my partner said that she'd rather stand in the middle because it would be a little fun going to another school and moving, because you might meet new friends and you might meet new persons. But she said it might be a little sad because you might miss your old friends, and you might get really embarrassed in other schools.
So a little bit on both sides.
Yeah.
All right. Take a seat. Take a seat.
Take the lower off your feet.
Okay, so just pop in the chat box or feel free to share aloud, whatever you're comfortable with. What did we notice? There was so much there. What sorts of things did we see? So some prompts to help you. What did it look like? What did it feel like? What did it sound like? And how were students, were they engaged, disengaged, bored, interactive? Yes, I love the call and response as well, Joan. And she had something I've never heard of, the righteous, I forget it. It was the righteous right hand, I think it was. And students' voices are central to the conversation, Carmen. Yes. And student voices, I will tell you this, is a huge element of cultural responsive practice. And knowing how to embed that into your lesson is key. Yes, very conversational, exactly. Anything else? Now, I would put this, notice I put it's a quick write. This is a simple for quick write. I highly recommend this for videos, especially if you're trying to get students engaged in materials. Video is such a great way to engage students. I'm sure most of you use that already, but it's a really good way to put prompts on the board or, online like I have now, and getting students to either write in the chat box or do a quick write in their books as well, their notebooks. Yes, Joan, the action thermometer encourages more movement. I love that, definitely. Okay. So what did we notice? So I wanted to see what everyone said, and obviously you've touched on some of these things as well, some of the strategies and the outcomes for Miss Urker, and I put a summary here. We've talked about action thermometer, student choice, raise your righteous right hand. I forgot the raise. So that encourages the outcome of respect and student voice again. Book selection. Notice the book that she chose, Amelia's Road. It was very reflective of part of her student population and the experiences. Again, I can't do it in this webinar for time's sake. It's a whole nother session, but I do talk in some other sessions about how do we encourage student experience and perspective and bring that into the lesson. Routines. Notice how many routines that she had. They were like automatic. They just knew exactly what one call and one response was. So that was great. There was accountability and discipline. Think, pair, share. And I love that. Critical thinking. That's something that they get to use. Inquiry, communication, collaboration, and it encourages their experiences to be shared. Pick a stick is a great way for inclusiveness and fairness as well. And, they have to be prepared. They have to think of an answer, of a response. Again, and it's good for student voice and communication. And again, the physical movement, like I mentioned, it encourages the brain break and time for memory retention, which a lot of research has proven that it allows that memory retention for students. I mean, just think of us as adults. How much of this will you remember? You'll remember key takeaways, but it's really hard to remember a bulk of a lesson unless we have time to reflect, discuss, write, and so on. So what I would love to do, now we don't have time, so I'm not going to do this. I would do a breakout room here. Strategies or routines do you use in your class? Pop them in the chat box as I continue on with the slides so we can finish on time. I would love for you to share your strategies. And if we had a breakout session, it would be great for you, I actually had planned where you actually have time to discuss how you use those strategies and routines, and they obviously work, and I would love for you to share in the chat box so you can learn from each other and employ different strategies. So we're not going to do that. So the very last thing, action steps, I have 2 for you. This, again, if you want, you can take a screenshot or email me and I'd be happy to share this with you. I put 3 key questions on how you can assess your climate to make it that positive, inclusive, culturally responsive climate. Great climate questionnaire that I found on Teaching Tolerance. It's a resource that I use quite a lot of. They really focus heavily on social justice, anti-racism. It's amazing for SEL. It's a really great website. So questions: how can you assess yourself, your school, and your class climate? Does my class feel, look, and sound welcoming, safe, and inclusive? Do students and teacher treat each other with respect? And do you think that students are comfortable enough to share personal experiences and perspectives in your class? And if they're not, ask yourself why. What barriers do you need to remove, and how can you remove those barriers? And the last action step, I put this here as well, so you could look up some of these routines. If you've never heard of some of them, look them up. Email me for more information. I have pack loads of information on routines and strategies, but some key questions to look at, which we already have in the previous slides, but you can delve more in your own time. Does my class have routines built into it? If so, what? And how often? Are you consistent with that? Consistency is key. Students love consistency because they need consistency. They need that person to tell them, all the time, to direct them. What strategies do I incorporate into my lessons? So this is very key as well in the cultural responsive classroom. And as you can see, I use some of these things just to illustrate how you can embed those into your digital classrooms, and also in person, you can do that, right? And this is everything just to show you what I did in one session. I did all of these things, and I put down that we've done at least 12 different strategies. So, and this is the Padlet. See on the bottom, I said where this was teachers that actually shared their photos and a little bit about themselves. So it's a really good way to build community. So I would really appreciate, just to close off this session, I'm so proud of myself for actually finishing on time. Did you catch it? I call this is the exit ticket, which you're probably more familiar with, but I like to call it, did you catch it? A call to action. Can you write in the chat box 1 or 2 strategies or action steps that you think you can take immediately into your classroom to shift that to a more positive climate and culture, to be more culturally responsive? I would love to see something in the chat box. I do see something. Thank you, Carmen, for sharing. Peer assessment. Yes. Traffic lights. Love that. Really good stuff. Highlight green when they read it being addressed in the task. Yellow to show that it is there but needs work. And red where it is not obvious to the reader. Great strategy. And it's great to share this in the community that we have here, right? So imagine what we can do with our students in a community like this, where they can learn from each other, learn different perspectives, and so on. So email me, because I don't have time to show you where to find it on my website. But I do a session on cultural responsiveness every third Wednesday of every month. The next topic is helping students build a critical lens. So I shared this in part 1. So these 2 is what I covered in March, building relationships and self-awareness. And this is what we did today, class, climate, and culture. And May 19, the next session, we'll be talking about critical lens. If you want any of these, I challenge you to go to my website and find it. No, but I can give you, if you just email me, I'd be happy to share these with you. There's some really good things. I give these to administrators and teachers as well. And if you follow me on Instagram, I know one person asked, how can I check for future events? I'm posting weekly. I always share events, and I share strategies every Monday or Tuesday. And then I share a call to action. And what I do at the end of the week, maybe Friday, Saturday, or the weekend, I share the outcome. And it's great because teachers from around the world get to see what other teachers have said. And it's a really good dialogue in social media. So you can follow me there. And here's my details on LinkedIn or Instagram. And like I said, if you have any questions or you want more information on any of the strategies, or you'd like to see something in another session, please let me know. I have been a coach here in New York as well for 3 years, so I'm very familiar with coaching and a lot of the needs. I don't know everything, but I'm very passionate and well-researched in the area of cultural responsiveness. And thanks, Carmen and Starla. I cannot wait to read these. Yeah, the what do you notice strategy. Yes, study of religion. You can apply that to any subject. That's what I love. There's so many great things in the chat. Thank you. And Starla said, I do not have a classroom. However, I really want a classroom that represents my students, as well as inviting them to want to learn about others. Yes. And even inviting parents, members of the community into the classroom. I've seen that done, and it's a good way to just make them feel proud of where they're from, and sharing their experiences. It builds that and strengthens the community. You're welcome, Starla. I will stay around to respect everybody's time. And if you have any questions, please feel free to email me. And thank you for sharing your time. I know you're busy people in the education world, so thank you again. And I'll see you next time. And I'll just stay for another few minutes. Okay, unless there's any more questions, I will head off, and thank you once again for joining today's session. Yes, great question, Joan. I'm sure there are, but if that's a session you'd be interested in, I could lead something like that, because I do train teachers in the Philippines virtually. I have a friend in the Philippines that really need help with digital ed tech tools. So I know you could YouTube them, but if you want something specific where we actually have breakout rooms and we have hands-on experiences with some of them, I would love to set something up. Is that something that would be useful if I set up a session? Because I could see that happening, like even if it's like a 30-minute, we could practice using them. Great. Good to know. So like things like the word cloud, like Menti, Padlet, and they're all free. Okay, that's great. I'll keep that in mind, Joan. Thank you so much. If you don't have any other questions, I will let you go. Thank you as well. You're welcome. Great. Okay, then take care. Have a great evening.